The server room hummed with a low, constant vibration that Ethan felt in his teeth. Blue light washed over his face, reflecting off the glass of the monitors. He did not look at the clock. He looked at the data streams. While the rest of the office floor buzzed with talk of the latest viral app, Ethan sat in the cold, windowless silence of the basement. He watched for the anomalies, the tiny spikes in traffic that signaled a breach. A red line flickered on his secondary screen. He tapped a sequence of keys, his movements precise and practiced. He isolated the connection, rerouted the traffic, and slammed the firewall shut. The line went green. He did not celebrate. He leaned back and took a slow breath, his eyes already searching for the next vulnerability. To him, every network was a fortress. Most people built things to be seen, to be loud, to be popular. Ethan built things to be impenetrable. He knew that the most dangerous threats were the ones that made no noise until they had already taken root. He checked the integrity of the core server one last time, satisfied with the steady flow of data, and began the next scan. Ethan left the server room for a break and found the office kitchen in a state of frantic energy. His colleagues were debating the next big trend, their voices loud and hurried. He listened, but he was not hearing strategy. He was watching the patterns. He knew what they earned, and he saw the mounting pressure in their eyes. Most of them lived on the edge of a total breakdown. They possessed high salaries, yet they carried crushing debt that grew with every passing month. They spent their days protecting corporate data with extreme rigor, ensuring every byte was locked behind layers of encryption. Yet, when they left their desks, they left their own futures wide open to collapse. It was a contradiction he could not ignore. Their personal finances were like a network with no firewall, riddled with backdoors and unpatched vulnerabilities. He watched one engineer complain about a credit card interest rate while holding a luxury coffee that cost more than an hour of work. The irony was sharp. They were experts at securing external systems, yet they were failing to secure their own basic survival. Ethan looked at the data in his mind, mapping their income against their habits. It was a system error on a massive scale. He realized then that they were not just spending money. They were systematically losing their freedom to unseen, preventable threats. Ethan retreated to his desk, the realization cold and sharp. He pulled up a notebook, not for code, but for his own balance sheet. He recalled a principle. Before success can grow, it must be protected. He looked at his credit card statement. A high-interest balance stared back at him. To his mind, it was no longer a bill. It was a malicious virus, a self-replicating script devouring his resources from the inside out. He had to quarantine it. He cut his discretionary spending to the absolute minimum, treating every dollar saved as a packet of data diverted from a compromised port. He funneled every spare cent into the high-interest debt, watching the balance drop like a server load after a successful patch. For the first time, he felt the resistance of the system fighting back, but he remained cold, precise, and relentless. He paid off the last of the debt and watched the interest charges flatline to zero. He moved to the next step, securing his perimeter. He set aside a cash reserve, a buffer zone that acted as a hardened firewall against sudden shocks. The money sat there, untouched, a solid block of static defense. It did not promise high returns. It promised that if the network crashed, he would still be standing. With his defenses hardened, Ethan turned his attention to the next objective: growth. He knew that relying on manual checks was a design flaw. Every time he sat down to decide where to invest, he introduced the risk of error, hesitation, or emotional impulse. He needed a system that operated in the background, a silent process that required zero manual intervention. He configured an automated pipeline. Each month, on a set schedule, a fixed percentage of his income left his paycheck and moved directly into a diversified portfolio. No decisions, no alerts, no constant monitoring of ticker symbols or news feeds. It was a boring, rigid, and entirely reliable loop. He treated his investments like a background task on a server, running with low priority but perfect consistency. If he tried to tinker with it, he was only inviting instability. He stripped away the ability to override the system, forcing himself to trust the protocol he had written. He watched the logs as the capital accumulated, the balance increasing in the background while he slept. The logic was sound. By removing his own influence, he removed the possibility of panic selling or chasing vanity metrics. His wealth began to compound, detached from his daily moods, operating like a secure, self-sustaining server cluster that never required a reboot. The alert sounded across the office floor, not as a siren, but as a collective gasp. Market indices were hemorrhaging points, dropping like a failing power grid. Around Ethan, the atmosphere shifted to pure, unadulterated chaos. Colleagues stood at their desks, faces pale, eyes darting between flashing red screens and open trade windows. One engineer to his left was frantically clicking, trying to exit positions before the next dip. The air was thick with the sound of desperate voices and the frantic tapping of keyboards. Ethan sat still. He watched the same red numbers cascade down his monitor, but he saw no threat. To him, the plummet was merely a temporary system glitch, a spike in data noise that his protocol was designed to absorb. He did not reach for his mouse. He did not check the news for a reason why. He simply watched the automated script continue to execute as planned, buying low while the rest of the room burned their capital in a panic. He treated the volatility like a background process error, something to be logged, analyzed, and ignored. While the office spiraled into an emotional meltdown, Ethan leaned back, closed his eyes for a moment, and let the system do its job. He had already accounted for the crash. It was just a variable in his code. Years drifted by, marked not by milestones of luxury, but by the steady, rhythmic expansion of his assets. Ethan climbed the corporate ladder, and with each promotion came a significant increase in his paycheck. The office culture demanded he signal his success through visible upgrades. Peer after peer moved into larger spaces, purchased new vehicles, or flaunted status symbols that signaled their rising status. Ethan saw these as vulnerabilities. Every time a bonus hit his account, he felt the pull to match the standard of his environment, to upgrade his daily experience. He treated these urges like malware attempting to infiltrate his system. He blocked the impulse. He did not move to a more expensive apartment. He did not upgrade his hardware or his surroundings. Instead, he redirected every excess dollar directly into his investment engine. He viewed his lifestyle as a fixed variable that must remain constant to maximize output. By keeping his expenses flat, he forced his savings rate to accelerate with every raise. It became a silent, powerful rebellion against the expectation of consumption. He watched his net worth climb, fueled by the difference between what he earned and what he refused to spend. He was not depriving himself. He was reinforcing his foundation, ensuring that his financial system remained impenetrable, while others traded their long-term security for immediate, fleeting displays of wealth. The rhythm of the server room was broken by a sudden sharp rap on Ethan's desk. He looked up. A young engineer stood there, eyes bright with the frantic energy of someone chasing a ghost. The engineer leaned in, hands shoved deep into his pockets, his posture vibrating with impatient urgency. "I saw your latest performance report," the young man started, his voice barely a whisper. "You have been hitting the markets perfectly. Just tell me what you are buying. Give me the ticker symbol for the next big play." He shifted his weight, glancing over his shoulder to ensure no one else was listening. He was looking for a shortcut, a digital hack to bypass the slow grind of accumulation. To him, Ethan's success was a secret code waiting to be cracked. Ethan did not smile. He did not lean back. He simply stopped typing, the cursor blinking steadily on his dark screen. He looked at the young engineer and saw the same vulnerability he had patched out of his own life years ago. The air between them grew heavy with the friction of two opposing philosophies. One sought a volatile explosion of luck. The other demanded the cold, hard logic of protection. Ethan reached for his mouse, his movements slow and deliberate, and finally addressed the intrusion. Ethan turned his monitor. The screen did not display a chaotic web of fluctuating tickers or red and green spikes. It showed a single, steady, upward-sloping line, a geometric progression of compounded growth that looked almost too simple to be true. The young engineer squinted, his eyes darting across the axes, searching for the hidden leverage or the risky trades. He found nothing but consistency. "Where is the play?" the engineer asked, his voice betraying his disbelief. "Where are the options? The volatility?" Ethan pointed to the curve. "You are looking for a miracle, but you are missing the foundation. The first rule of security is to protect what you already have." The engineer stared, his brow furrowing as the reality of the math collided with his expectations. He wanted a shortcut, a sudden surge of profit, but the screen showed a quiet, relentless accumulation that defied the need for luck. Wealth is not about how fast you can make it. It is about how well you can keep it from leaking away. The engineer stood frozen, the silence of the server room amplifying the weight of the statement. He looked back at the screen, and for the first time, the simplicity did not look like a failure. It looked like a fortress. The young engineer eventually turned and walked away, his pace slow, his mind clearly turning over the logic of the steady line. Ethan watched him leave, then turned back to his own terminal. The office air felt thin and cold. He navigated to his primary financial portal. He entered his authentication sequence, his fingers moving with practiced, rhythmic precision. There was no rush, no heat, just the familiar, steady cadence of a task performed correctly. The screen refreshed, pulling data from the encrypted server. A string of numbers populated the field, 7 figures. $1 million! The total sat there, plain and undeniable, a testament to years of rigid, boring discipline. He did not lean back. He did not cheer. He did not reach for a phone to share the news. The number was simply the output of a system he had designed, tested, and maintained. It was the natural result of a firewall that held. He scanned the transaction logs, confirming the integrity of every asset, every dividend, every automated reinvestment. The balance was secure. The foundation was absolute. He stared at the screen, the silence of the room now feeling not empty, but complete. Ethan kept his gaze on the screen for another heartbeat. There was no surge of adrenaline, only the quiet satisfaction of a system running at peak efficiency. He had identified the risks, reinforced the foundation, and stayed disciplined through every market shift. He moved his hand to the edge of the laptop lid. The hinge moved with a smooth, soft click. The glow of the display vanished, plunging the desk into shadow. He pushed the machine away, clearing the workspace. It was finished. He had proven that extraordinary wealth was rarely the result of a single, brilliant gamble. It was the quiet, consistent output of protecting what one already possessed until that security grew into something massive. He stood up, pushed his chair in, and turned toward the darkened office exit. The network was secure. His future was shielded. He walked out of the server room, the heavy door clicking shut behind him with a final, resonant sound. He left the room exactly as he found it, but the foundation he had built would stand for a lifetime. He had achieved the ultimate objective, total, impenetrable stability. The logic held. The system was complete.